Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Greetings to the thesis examiner, especially the thesis supervisor, Dr. Sahid Susilo Nugroho. My name is Risyad Sutan Brandama from the Department of Management, and today I would like to present the result of my undergraduate thesis research titled The Influence of Attitude on Avoidance in Social Media Advertising. Let's begin with the introduction on chapter 1. So as we all know, Instagram is one of the most popular social media platform in Indonesia. And according to data in 2021, there are 78 million active Instagram users in Indonesia, with 63 million people that can be reached with adverts in Indonesia in 2020. Accordingly, every day, 500 million people utilize Instagram stories, with 88% of users get more interested in a brand or product after viewing it in their stories. According to the data also, 50% of Instagram users visit the website to purchase a product after seeing the Instagram ads. This raises a trend that Instagram ads become very popular tools for online businesses to gain brand exposure as well as potential customers. Despite of this trend, there are still many cases where these consumers tend to be overwhelmed gradually by the number of online ads they encounter, which led them to have certain motive to avoid these ads. Next is the theoretical background. Talking about avoidance, according to Cho and Chan, there are three types of avoidance. The first one is behavioral avoidance, the next one is cognitive avoidance, and the third one is affective avoidance. We're going to use consumer socialization theory in this research, especially the socialization agents in this theory, which are peers and media, and we're going to examine the effects of peers and media as socialization agents on the attitudes of social media advertising, or SMA. The researcher formulate problems, which consists of three problems. The first one is some users have a tendency to be annoyed and bothered by Instagram ads. Thus, they swipe past the ads immediately. Next one, there are very few studies that explore social forces as the key in shaping one's attitude toward advertising. Next one is that there are knowledge gap in understanding factors affecting ads avoidance in Indonesia. These are the 7 questions for this research. The first one is, does susceptibility to peer influence has a positive effect on attitude towards social media advertising, or SMA? The second one is, does the relationship between peer susceptibility and SMA avoidance is mediated by attitude toward SMA? The third one is, does social media usage have a positive impact on attitude toward SMA? The third one is, does the relationship between social media usage and SMA avoidance is mediated by attitude toward SMA? The fifth one is, does susceptibility to social media influence have a positive impact on attitude toward SMA? The sixth one being, does the relationship between susceptibility to social media influence is mediated by attitude toward SMA? And the last one is, does attitude toward SMA have a negative impact on SMA avoidance? The objective of this research is to examine the factors affecting consumers' advertising avoidance behavior in social media brands advertisement using consumer socialization theory social forces, which I've mentioned before is peers and media. And furthermore, this research is also aimed to establish whether these socialization agents are impacting ad avoidance behavior via attitude toward advertising. Moving on to the research scope, this research is a replicate to the previous research done by Cincanak Chokchai and De Gregorio in 2020, titled A Consumer Socialization Approach to Understanding Advertising Avoidance on Social Media. The object in this research is Instagram or Instagram advertising, and the research location is in Java Island, Indonesia, and the research time is in 2022. Moving on to the chapter 2, literature review and hypothesis development. As I mentioned before, we are going to use consumer socialization theory in this thesis. Consumer socialization itself is the procedures through which young people learn skills, information, and attitudes necessary for their role as consumers in the marketplace. And we're going to use the 2 socialization agents, which are peers and media. And according to Moses and Churchill, peers and media can influence the outcomes of CS framework through the process of modeling, reinforcements, and social interactions. Moving on to the variable profiles, there are a total of 5 variables. The first one is susceptibility to peer influence, or one's willingness to agree with the opinion of their peers, as well as openness to absorbing and acting on information acquired from them. And the next one is social media usage, or consumers' intensity in using social media. Next one is susceptibility to social media influence, which is consumers' openness to being influenced directly or indirectly by media content. The next one is attitude towards social media advertising, which is consumers' thoughts and feelings towards the advertisement. And the last one is social media advertising avoidance, which is any acts taken by media consumers to decrease their exposure to advertisement material differently. So this is the research model for this research adopted from the previous research. As you can see, hypothesis 2, 4, and 6 is the mediation hypothesis. Moving on to the research method. The strategy used in this research is quantitative technique with online survey method, specifically questionnaires in Google form. And to measure the item on this research, using 5-point Likert scale, 1 being strongly disagree and 5 being strongly agree, except for social media platform usage variable. We are using social networking sites use pattern scales by Ali. Moving on to the sampling design, the sampling method is non-probability purposive sampling, and the population is active Instagram users in Java Island, Indonesia. More specifically, within the age range of 16 to 50 years old, and must possess an Instagram account and have been exposed to Instagram advertisements by more than 5 times in the past 6 months. And the sample size is 210 respondents. Moving on to the operational definition, the first one is susceptibility to peer influence, which will measure consumer perception on their peers' opinion and behavior towards Instagram advertisement. Next one is the social media platform usage, which is measuring consumer confession on the intensity of their social media usage patterns and needs. The next one is susceptibility to social media influence, which is measuring consumer perceptions on the influence of advertisements on Instagrams to their purchasing decision and brand loyalty. The next one is attitude towards social media advertising, which is measuring consumer confession towards social media advertisement. And the last one is social media advertising avoidance, which is measuring consumer confession on the exposure of advertising contents on their social media and their confessions on their feelings toward them. This is the respondents' profile. The majority of the respondents are female and within the range of 26 to 35 years old. The majority of the respondents live in West Java. The majority of respondents, they are university students, with the monthly expenses from 2 million and 1 rupiah up to 3.5 million rupiah. As I mentioned before, the research object in this study is Instagram or Instagram ads. Moving on to the data analysis method. To analyze the data in this study, we are using partial least square structural equation modeling, or PLS-SEM. And the first step is to do measurement model evaluation, which consists of reliability testing, convergent validity testing, discriminant validity testing. Next one is the structural model evaluation, where we will see the result of the R-square, chi-square, and F-square. Next one is the model fit evaluation, which we were going to see the result of the SRMR and the NFI. And lastly, the hypothesis testing procedure, which we will use the bootstrapping method for path coefficient result and the indirect effect testing result. And so this is the research model specification modified from the previous research. And this research we are using Smart PLS 4.0 for data analysis. Moving on to the data analysis in chapter 4. First of all, this is the research data quality. I'm showing the descriptive statistics. As you can see, the highest mean is on the variables ATT, which means that the majority of 210 respondents is likely to agree with the measurement items for this variable. With that being said, the standard deviations of the variables ATT is the lowest, which means that the variable has the least variations of answers. Moving on, still on the research data quality, this is the correlation between variables result. As you can see, the lowest correlation value is between the variable SMU and the variable AA, while the highest correlation value is the variable SSE and the variable ATT. So now we're going to see the measurement model evaluation results. The first measurement model evaluation result is reliability testing, and we are using composite reliability. As you can see, all the variable is reliable. All the because the constructions of all the variables satisfy the requirements of good reliability, which is more than 0.6 or 0.7. Next is the conversion validity using outer loadings. As you can see, the rule of thumb applied in conversion validity are the standardized outer loading, and it should be equal to or more than 0.5. Well, ideally, it is equal to or more than 0.7. And as you can see, all of the outer loadings is more than 0.5. That means that the conversion validity testing is valid. Other from outer loadings, we are going to see the average variance extracted. The criteria for conversion validity using AVE is more than 0.5, and you can see all the variables is valid because the value of the AVE all is higher than 0.5. Next is the discriminant validity using the Fornell-Lacker criterion. So the Fornell-Lacker criterion determines if the AVE is greater than the squared correlation with any other construct, which means the variable is valid. As you can see, the variable is valid because the Fornell-Lacker criteria result shows that all the variable is greater than any other constructs. You can see the value in the bolded value. So the variable is valid. Moving on to the structural model evaluation. First of all, we have the R-square. The results of this R-square. First is for the variable attitude. We can see from the attitude toward SMA, the variable is the result is for the R-square is 0.118, which is considered weak because it means that the variable SPI, SMU, and SSI could substantially explain the variable ATT at the level of only 11.8%, while the rest is influenced by other variables not included in this research model. Same goes for the variable AA or SMA avoidance. It means that the variable attitude toward SMA can substantially explain the variable AA at the level of only 4.7%, while the rest is affected by other variables which are not included in this research model. Moving on to the Q-square value. The Q-square value, as you can see, of variable ATT is 0.069, and variable AA has a value of 0.008, and this is indicating that the model has a predictive relevance. So, moving on to the F-square. The F-square is used to examine the effect size, which is measured to evaluate whether an exogenous constructs has a substantive impact on the endogenous constructs when that specific exogenous construct is omitted from the model. As you can see from the low value in this table, that there are mostly weak effects for the exogenous constructs and the endogenous constructs. Moving on to the result for the model fits. So this is the fit summary for SRMR and NFI. A good fit derived from SRMR value. It needs to be less than 0.08, and as you can see from the saturated model, this is 0.051, which means based on the SRMR, this is a good fit. But for the NFI, it is not a good fit because it needs to be equal to or more than 0.9, while the NFA saturated model result is 0.805. Moving on to the hypothesis testing procedure, as you can see, the The hypothesis that is not supported is hypothesis 7, because although it is significant and the estimate is good, the direction of the hypothesis is on the positive direction, while the initial hypothesis suggests that the attitude toward SMA has a negative effect on SMA avoidance. That's why hypothesis 7 is not supported. In the indirect effect testing, H2 is not supported because the indirect effects p value is insignificant because it is higher than 0.05. So H2 is not supported. So this is the path coefficient figure. As you can see, only a hypothesis 2 and hypothesis 7 which is not supported, because hypothesis 2, the indirect effect testing result is insignificant, and while hypothesis 7 although has a significant value, but the direction of the estimate result is in the wrong direction compared to the initial hypothesis, which is negative. Moving on to the conclusion on chapter 5. So these are the conclusions. The first conclusion is susceptibility to peer influence significantly has a positive effect on attitude towards SMA. And the next one is the relationship between susceptibility to peer influence and SMA avoidance is not mediated by attitude toward SMA. The third one is social media usage significantly has a positive effect on attitude toward SMA. The fourth one is the relationship between social media usage and SMA avoidance is mediated by attitude toward SMA. The fifth one, susceptibility to social media influence significantly has a positive effect on attitude toward SMA. And the sixth one, the relationship between susceptibility to social media influence and SMA avoidance is mediated by attitude toward SMA. And the seventh one, attitude toward SMA significantly has a positive effect on SMA avoidance. So the theoretical contribution in this research is that Indonesian consumers actually are inclined to take steps to prevent Instagram adverts despite their positive views regarding those ads. As we can see from the hypothesis 7, where attitude is actually having a positive effect on the advertising avoidance behavior. The next one is unlike the previous research, consumers who use Instagram with high intensity could still perform behavioral avoidance on ads. And we can also know from this research that the discussion with peers and the influence one can get from them can also be from content sharing and digital activity observation. So this is the research limitations. So the research uses only consumer socialization theory by word, with social agents such as peers and media as their main predictors to analyze the behavioral outcome of attitude towards advertisements, which is avoidance. But based on the results, using only those variables may not be enough to represent the advertising avoidance behavior from Indonesian consumers. Also, this research verifies the effect of susceptibility to peers and social media influence to the attitude towards social media advertising and advertising behavior using CS theory. But the theory lacks the explanations of why the results of this research are obtained in different research settings. So, for the future research suggestions, the researchers suggest to use susceptibility to peers and media influence alongside predictors such as perceived informativeness, credibility, irritation, etc. for research in Indonesia to further explain the advertising avoidance behavior in this location, and to use qualitative approach as well into determining the process and reasons for consumers' avoidance behavior and attitude towards social media advertisement. Thank you very much for your attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.